Catherine Moore had dreamed of this moment since she was a little girl watching the stars from her bedroom window in rural Kansas. Now she stood in the Grand Council chamber of the Sara Prime, wearing the dark blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps, watching as the flag of humanity was raised alongside those of the 12 founding species of the Galactic Council. The chamber was enormous, built to accommodate beings of all sizes and shapes. Crystal pillars stretched toward a ceiling that displayed the swirling colors of the nebula outside. Representatives from dozens of species filled the circular seating, their eyes fixed on the small human delegation at the center. High Chancellor Zorvax, leader of the ancient Valtheran species, approached Catherine with what passed for a smile on his reptilian face. His scales shimmered green and gold under the chamber lights, and his yellow eyes held what seemed like genuine warmth. "Ambassador Moore," he said, his translator device converting his hissing speech into smooth English. "On behalf of the Galactic Council, I welcome humanity to our great family. Your species has shown remarkable progress in the 30 years since we first made contact. We are honored to call you our friends." Catherine bowed her head respectfully. "High Chancellor, humanity is grateful for your guidance and support. We look forward to contributing to the peace and prosperity of the galaxy." The ceremony continued with speeches and formal declarations. Catherine's aide, a young man named Peter Grant, stood beside her with tears in his eyes. His grandfather had been part of the first team to receive the Valtheran visitors when they landed in the Nevada desert 3 decades ago. "We actually did it," Peter whispered. "We're part of something bigger than ourselves now." Catherine smiled and squeezed his arm. This is just the beginning. She could not have known how terribly wrong she was. 6 months passed, and humanity embraced its new role in the galactic community. Trade agreements brought advanced technology to Earth. Human scientists worked alongside alien researchers on projects that promised to solve problems like disease, pollution, and energy shortages. Young humans traveled to alien worlds as students and tourists, returning with stories that inspired millions. Admiral Nathan Cole commanded the orbital defense fleet that protected Earth. He was a tall man with graying hair and tired eyes that had seen too many battles during humanity's internal conflicts before first contact. Now he enjoyed the relative peace of patrol duties and spent his free time talking to his wife Linda and their twin daughters through video calls. "When are you coming home, Daddy?" his daughter Emma asked during one such call. She was 8 years old, with her mother's brown eyes and her father's stubborn chin. "2 more weeks, sweetheart," Nathan replied. "Then I have a whole month of leave. We can go to that beach in Hawaii you've been asking about. I promise." "I promise." Dr. Samuel Wright worked at the Mars Research Colony, studying Valthoran technology to understand how it might be adapted for human use. He was a thin man with thick glasses and an enthusiasm for his work that his colleagues found both inspiring and exhausting. "The energy conversion rates are incredible," he explained to his mentor, Dr. Helen Park, as they examined a Valtheran power cell. "If we can figure out how they achieve this efficiency, we could solve Earth's energy problems within a decade." "Actor," Park nodded thoughtfully. She was an older woman, with white hair and steady hands that had performed surgery on 3 different worlds. "The Valtherans have been generous with their knowledge. Sometimes I wonder why," Samuel laughed. "Why wouldn't they be? We're allies now, friends." Dr. Park said nothing, but her eyes remained troubled. The warning signs came too late, and were understood even later. Valtheran ships began positioning themselves near human colonies under the excuse of joint military exercises. Council representatives asked detailed questions about Earth's defense capabilities. Trade agreements that seemed beneficial suddenly included clauses that limited human expansion into certain regions of space. Catherine noticed the changes and raised concerns with her superiors, but she was told not to worry. The Council was simply being cautious with a new member species. It was normal procedure. Then came the night that changed everything. Nathan Cole was on the bridge of his carrier when the sensors detected massive energy signatures emerging from subspace all around. Earth. Hundreds of ships, far more than any training exercise would require, surrounded the planet in a perfect sphere. "What the hell is going on?" Nathan demanded. Get me command immediately. Before the communication could connect, the first weapons fired, the Valtheran fleet struck with precision that spoke of careful planning. Earth's orbital defense stations were destroyed in the opening seconds. The small human fleet, caught completely off guard, was torn apart by weapons they had no defense against. Nathan watched in horror as the carrier beside his exploded, killing 3,000 crew members instantly. His own ship shuddered under impacts that tore through its hull. "All ships, retreat," he ordered. "Get out of orbit now." But there was nowhere to run. The Valtheran ships were everywhere, and more were arriving every second. On Earth's surface, people looked up at the night sky and saw fire raining down from heaven. Cities that had stood for centuries were reduced to ashes in moments. New Chicago, where Linda Cole was putting her daughters to bed, vanished in a flash of light that was visible from space. Nathan screamed his wife's name as he watched the city disappear. His hands gripped the console so hard that his knuckles turned white. Around him, his crew fought desperately to keep the damaged ship alive. On Mars, the research colony received a brief warning before Valtheran ships descended. Dr. Park pushed Samuel toward an escape pod as the ceiling collapsed around them. "Go," she shouted. "Someone has to survive to tell what happened here." Samuel tried to argue, but she was already gone, buried under tons of debris. He stumbled into the pod and launched just as the colony exploded behind him. Catherine Moore survived because she was on the Sara Prime. Far from the slaughter, she learned of the attack when a council guard came to her quarters with armed soldiers behind him. "Ambassador Moore," the guard said without emotion, "you are hereby stripped of your diplomatic status. Humanity has been declared a rogue species by order of the Galactic Council. You will be detained pending further decisions regarding your fate." "What are you talking about?" Catherine demanded. "What has happened?" The guard did not answer. He simply gestured for the soldiers to take her away. In the days that followed, Catherine learned the truth from sympathetic aliens who whispered through her cell door. Earth was burning. Mars was gone. The human colonies were being systematically destroyed. The council had voted, and 5 species, including the Valtherans, had supported the motion to eliminate humanity. Before it could become a threat to their power, 3 billion people died in what would become known as the Thessera. Betrayal. The surviving human fleet, reduced to a few dozen damaged ships, gathered in deep space. Nathan Cole, now the highest-ranking officer left alive, looked at the faces of his remaining crew. They were broken, grieving, and lost. "What do we do now, Admiral?" His executive officer asked. Nathan thought of his daughters' faces, of the promise he would never keep. Something cold and hard settled in his chest, replacing the warmth that had once lived there. "We survive," he said quietly, "and then we make them pay for every single life they took." Somewhere in a cell on the Sara Prime, Catherine Moore made herself a similar promise. She did not know how or when, but she knew with absolute certainty that humanity would have its revenge. The galaxy had made a terrible mistake, and one day they would understand just how terrible. The stars continued to shine, indifferent to the suffering below. But they would not remain indifferent forever. Humanity was wounded, but humanity was not dead. And wounded creatures, the galaxy would learn, could be far more dangerous than healthy ones. 10 years after the Thessara betrayal, the Galactic Council believed that humanity was dying. Their reports showed a scattered species hiding in remote corners of space, their numbers dwindling, their spirit broken. Valtheran patrols occasionally encountered human ships, but they were always small vessels that fled at the first sign of contact. The Council congratulated themselves on their successful elimination of a potential threat. High Chancellor Zorvax received awards for his decisive action. The 5 species that had voted for the attack prospered from resources they had taken from human colonies. Life in the galaxy continued as if humanity had never existed. They could not have been more wrong. Admiral Nathan Cole stood on the bridge of a makeshift command station, hidden deep within the veiled expanse, a region of space so dangerous that no other species dared to enter it. The nebula that surrounded them was filled with gravitational anomalies that could crush a ship like paper, radiation storms that could fry electronics in seconds, and spatial rifts that led to places unknown. For most species, the expanse was certain death. For humans, it became a fortress. Report, Nathan said to his officers. His hair had turned completely gray in the years since the betrayal, and deep lines marked his face. But his eyes burned with a cold fire that never faded. Captain Maria Santos stepped forward. She was a small woman with short black hair and a scar running down the left side of her face, a gift from a Valtheran blade during the evacuation of the outer colonies. Her brother had died buying time for civilian transports to escape. She carried his memory like armor around her heart. Production is ahead of schedule, she reported. The new shipyard completed its 20th vessel last week. Training programs are running at full capacity. We have over 50,000 combat-ready soldiers. Nathan nodded. And our intelligence network? Active in 14 council systems, the Valtherans still think we're hiding in caves somewhere, eating scraps. A ghost of a smile crossed Nathan's face. Good. Let them keep thinking that. Another section of the hidden base. Dr. Samuel Wright worked in a laboratory, filled with equipment that would have seemed like magic to scientists on old Earth. The thin, nervous researcher from Mars had transformed over the decade into a focused, a driven man who rarely slept and never forgot why he worked so hard. The energy patterns of the veiled expanse had proven to be more valuable than anyone had imagined. Samuel had spent years studying them, understanding them, and finally learning to harness them. The technologies he had developed gave humanity advantages that the Council could not imagine. The new shield generators are ready for testing, Samuel told his team. They operate on a completely different principle than anything the Council uses. Their weapons will pass through Valtheran shields like they're not there. But ours will stop anything they can throw at us. His assistant, a young woman named Lisa Park, who had been named after his dead mentor's family, looked at the data with wide eyes. The power requirements are incredible. How will our ships generate enough energy? Samuel smiled. That's the beautiful part. The Expanse taught us how to tap into subspace energy currents. Our ships will have effectively unlimited power. The Council's vessels will run out of ammunition long before we run out of the ability to fight. Meanwhile, Catherine Moore had escaped her prison cell on Thesara, prime with help from sympathetic aliens who had grown disgusted with their government's actions. She now served as the political leader of humanity's provisional government, traveling between the hidden colonies that had been established. Throughout the Expanse, her job was perhaps the hardest of all. She had to maintain hope among a people who had lost everything, to keep them united when grief and anger threatened to tear them apart, and to build alliances with species who might stand against the Council. The Kreth were the first to offer support. They were a warrior species, tall and broad with gray skin and 4 arms. Centuries ago, the Valtherans had conquered their homeworld and forced them into servitude. They had been waiting for an opportunity to strike back ever since their ambassador, a scarred veteran named Talvik, met with Catherine in a secret location far from Council censors. There are people of fire in them, Talvik observed, his deep voice rumbling like distant thunder. The Council fears fire. That is why they tried to extinguish you. They failed. Catherine replied simply, then perhaps we should discuss how to make them regret that failure. The alliance with the Kreth brought military expertise and intelligence about Council defenses, but Catherine did not stop there. She reached out to other oppressed species, the Selenari, telepaths who had been forced into servitude as living lie detectors for Council tribunals. The Morvax, artificial beings who had been denied recognition as sentient life and treated as property, and dozens of smaller species who had suffered under Council rule. One by one, they joined humanity's cause. Not because they believed humans could win, but because they would rather die fighting than continue living under Council oppression back in the Expanse. The human fleet grew stronger every month. New ships rolled out of hidden shipyards, each one incorporating technologies that the Council had never seen. New soldiers completed training programs that pushed them to their limits and beyond. New weapons were tested in the depths of the nebula. their power measured against asteroids and dead moons. Maria Santos commanded the Special Operations Division. Her teams learned to move like ghosts through council space, gathering intelligence, sabotaging key installations, and disappearing without a trace. They became so effective that council security forces started reporting ghost sightings, unable to believe that mere humans could accomplish such feats. The council thinks we're primitive, Maria told her soldiers before a mission. They think we're soft because we sought peace. They're about to learn that the same species that sought peace is also the species that hunted mammoths with pointed sticks and conquered every continent on our world. Nathan watched the preparations with grim satisfaction. Every ship completed was a promise to the 3 billion dead. Every soldier trained was a guarantee that their sacrifice would not be forgotten. Every weapon forged was a prayer for justice that would one day be answered. On the 10th anniversary of the betrayal, Nathan addressed the entire human population through the secure communication network that Samuel's team had developed. His face appeared on screens throughout the expanse, in hidden bases and secret colonies, in ships and stations where humans waited for the day of reckoning. 10 years ago, we lost our home, he said, his voice steady. We lost our families, our friends, our future. The council thought they had destroyed us. They were wrong. They did not destroy us. They made us stronger. They made us sharper. They made us into the very thing they feared we might become. He paused, letting his words sink in. The time for hiding is almost over. Soon we will emerge from this nebula, and the galaxy will learn what happens when you betray humanity. We will not stop until every species that participated in the betrayal has answered for their crimes. We will not rest until the council that murdered our people has been brought to justice, and we will not forget. Ever. Throughout the expanse, humans listened in silence. Some wept. Some cheered. All felt the same burning determination that had kept them going through the darkest. Years of their history, Catherine Moore stood beside Nathan as the broadcast ended. They had become close friends over the years, united by their shared loss and their shared purpose. Are we ready? She asked quietly. Nathan looked out the viewport at the swirling colors of the nebula that had sheltered them for so long. Soon they would leave its protection and face the full might of the Galactic Council. We've been ready since the day they burned our world, he replied. Now we just have to show them what that means. The silent decade was ending. The loud one was about to begin. The first sign that something had changed came when a Valtheran patrol fleet of 12 warships entered the outer edge of the veiled expanse. Their mission was routine. A simple sweep to confirm that the human refugees were still contained in their prison of radiation and gravity wells. None of the ships. Returned High Chancellor Zorvax received the report. In his private chambers on the Valtheran homeworld, he dismissed it as an accident, attributing the loss to the nebula's natural hazards. Ships that entered the expanse rarely came back, after all. The humans had nothing to do with it. The humans were broken and dying. Everyone knew that. 3 months later, a Valtheran mining colony on the resource-rich moon of Kethris went silent. The colony had been built over the ruins of a human settlement destroyed during the betrayal, and it had operated without incident for nearly a decade. When a relief force arrived, they found the colony completely intact. The buildings stood undamaged. The mining equipment hummed quietly. Food sat cooling on tables, as if the workers had just stepped away for a moment. But 7,000 Valtherans had vanished without a trace. The relief force, Commander. A veteran officer named Drexel searched the colony for hours. He found no signs of violence, no evidence of struggle. The Valtherans had simply disappeared, as if some invisible hand had plucked them from existence. Then his communication officer called him to the central hub with terror in her voice. Words had been burned into the metal floor of the colony's main hall, glowing red as if they had been carved by fire. The words were in every known galactic language. They all said the same thing. Remember? Drexel felt a chill run down his spine. He had fought in the campaign against the humans 10 years ago. He remembered the screaming and the dying, and the burning. He remembered telling himself that it was necessary. The humans were dangerous and had to be stopped now. Standing in an empty colony surrounded by the ghosts of 7,000 of his people, he wondered if perhaps his species had made a terrible mistake. Admiral Nathan Cole commanded operations from the bridge of the newly constructed flagship Vengeance. The ship was a masterpiece of engineering, built using technologies that the Council could not understand and could not counter. It could slip through subspace undetected, strike with devastating precision, and vanish before the enemy could respond. Phase 1 is complete, Maria Santos reported from her position beside him. All primary targets have been neutralized. The Council is starting to panic. Nathan studied the tactical display, showing Council space. Red dots marked locations where human forces had struck, military installations, communication relays, supply depots, and the occasional colony that had been built on former human territory. Each strike had been precise. Each message had been clear. "Begin Phase 2, Nathan ordered. I want them to know we're coming." The second phase of the campaign was designed not just to damage the Council's military capabilities, but to shatter their confidence completely. Human ships appeared in Council systems without warning, destroyed their targets, and disappeared before response forces could arrive. They left no survivors. Only wreckage and words burned into the debris. Remember, Dr. Samuel Wright's technologies made it all possible. The Whisper Network allowed human forces to coordinate across thousands of light years, as if they were in the same room. The new shield systems made human ships nearly invulnerable to Council weapons. The subspace engines let them move through space in ways the Council could not track or predict. The energy readings we're detecting are impossible, a Council scientist reported to High Chancellor Zorvax. No known technology can generate these signatures. It's as if the humans have harnessed forces we don't even have names for. Zorvax listened with growing unease. For the first time since the betrayal, he felt something he had not experienced in decades: fear. Maria Santos led the ground operations personally. Her strike teams had spent years training for this moment, learning to move through enemy territory like shadows. They wore armor that adapted to environmental threats in real time and carried weapons that could punch through Valtheran defenses like paper. One of her most successful operations targeted a Valthram military academy. On the planet Thresser, the academy had trained many of the officers who had participated in the attack on Earth. Maria had lost her brother to one of its graduates. Her team infiltrated the academy at night. Moving through its halls without triggering a single alarm, they did not kill the students. That was not the mission. Instead, they disabled every weapon in the armory, destroyed every training simulation, and left their message carved into the floor of the main hall. When the instructors arrived the next morning, they found their students unconscious but unharmed, lying in perfect rows on the practice field. Above them, written in smoke that would not dissipate for days, were the words, "Your weapons cannot protect you. Your walls cannot hide you." Remember, Catherine Moore continued building the alliance against the Council. Species that had once been too afraid to speak against their rulers now openly supported humanity's cause. The Kreth contributed warships and soldiers. The Selenari provided intelligence gathered through their telepathic networks. The Morvax offered technological expertise and manufacturing capabilities. "The Council is fracturing," Catherine reported to Nathan during a strategic meeting. 3 species have already withdrawn their support for continued military action against us. 2 more are negotiating secretly with our allies. Only the Valtherans and their closest partners still believe they can win. They'll learn otherwise soon enough. Nathan replied. The turning point came when human forces ambushed a Valtheran fleet carrying High General Morax, the commander who had personally ordered the destruction of Mars. The general's flagship, surrounded by 20 escort vessels, was supposed to be undetectable. Human intelligence networks had tracked it from the moment it left port. The ambush lasted 12 minutes. When it ended, Morax's escorts were debris, and his flagship was drifting powerless in space. Maria Santos led the boarding team personally. They found Morax on his bridge, surrounded by dead guards who had tried to protect him. He was a massive Valtheran, his scales marked with the patterns of high nobility. He looked at Maria with contempt as she approached. "You think this changes anything?" he hissed. "You can kill me, but the council will never fall. You are insects fighting against the inevitable." Maria studied him for a long moment. She thought about her brother, about the way he had smiled at her before running back toward the Valtherans, landing craft with nothing but a rifle and courage. He had bought her 3 minutes to get civilians to the escape pods. 3 minutes that had cost him everything. "You ordered the destruction of Mars," she said quietly. 40,000 people died because you signed a piece of paper. They were humans, Morax replied, as if that explained everything. Maria nodded slowly. "Yes, they were. And so am I." She raised her weapon, and Morax flinched, expecting death. But Maria did not fire. "Killing you would be too easy," she said. "You're going to live. You're going to stand trial before the entire galaxy. Everyone is going to see what you did and hear why you did it. And then you're going to spend the rest of your very long life watching everything you've built crumble around you." Morax was taken back to human territory, the first major prisoner of the war. His capture sent shockwaves through the council. If a high general could be taken from the heart of a protected convoy, then no one was safe. The evidence began flowing from human sources. Recordings of council meetings where the betrayal was planned, communications between species coordinating the attack, and testimonies from defectors who had grown disgusted with their governments. Actions. The galaxy watched in horror as the truth was revealed. The betrayal had not been a response to human aggression, as the council had claimed. It had been a preemptive strike against a species that the established powers found inconvenient. Humanity had been murdered not for anything they had done, but for what they might someday become. They feared what we might become. Catherine Moore addressed the galactic broadcast. Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned with righteous fury. "So they tried to destroy us before we could become it. They failed. Now we have become something far worse than anything they feared." She paused, letting her words echo across thousands of worlds. "We have become justice." The awakening was complete. Humanity had emerged from the shadows, and the galaxy trembled at what they had become. The Council had created a monster when they burned Earth, and now that monster was coming for them. Nathan Cole stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, watching the tactical display as human forces continued their campaign across Council space. 10 years of preparation had led to this moment. 10 years of grief and rage and determination were finally bearing fruit. "Admiral," his communication officer reported, "we're receiving messages from 12 Council species requesting negotiations." Nathan smiled coldly. "Tell them we'll negotiate when we're standing in the Council chamber on Thesara Prime, not a moment before." The final phase of the campaign was about to begin. The Galactic Council finally understood the true scope of the threat when human forces simultaneously attacked 14 strategic targets across Council space. In a single coordinated strike that lasted less than an hour, humanity destroyed shipyards that had taken centuries to build, communication relays that connected entire sectors, military academies that trained the Council's finest officers, and resource depots that supplied dozens of worlds. The attacks were precise, devastating, and impossible to defend against. Human ships appeared from nowhere, unleashed destruction that Council weapons could not match, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. Each target was chosen not just for its military value, but for its symbolic importance. The message was clear: nowhere is safe. High Chancellor Zorvax convened an emergency session in the Council chamber on Thesara Prime, the great hall that had once welcomed humanity into the galactic family now felt like a bunker under siege. Representatives from all 12 founding species sat in their designated seats, their faces showing various shades of fear, anger, and desperation. "This is unacceptable," demanded the Villani representative, her crystalline form flickering with agitation. "The humans were supposed to be broken. We destroyed their homeworld. We burned their colonies. How is this possible?" "You destroyed their homeworld," corrected the Helvian delegate, a being of flowing liquid contained within a transparent suit. His species had abstained from the betrayal vote, and he made no effort to hide his contempt for those who had participated. You united them. You gave them a cause worth dying for. You created the very threat you claimed to be preventing. The Valtharan admiral responsible for defending Council space stepped forward. His name was Kestrel, and he had served the Council for over a century. He was considered the finest military mind of his generation. The humans have developed technologies we do not understand, he reported grimly. Their ships can move through subspace in ways our sensors cannot track. Their weapons penetrate our shields as if they do not exist. Their soldiers appear inside our most secure installations without triggering any alarms. We are fighting an enemy we cannot see, cannot predict, and cannot stop. Silence fell over the chamber. For the first time in its long history, the Galactic Council had no answer to a threat. They had ruled the galaxy for millennia, crushing any species that dared to challenge their authority. Now, they faced an enemy that had risen from the ashes of genocide, and they did not know how to fight it. We must negotiate, suggested the representative from the Thrall Collective. A hive mind species that had supported the betrayal, but now regretted it deeply. We must offer terms before they destroy us all. Negotiate. Zorvax rose from his seat, his scales flushing red with anger. We do not negotiate with primitives. We do not bow to a species we defeated 10 years ago. We will crush them as we should have crushed them completely the first time. With respect, High Chancellor, Admiral Kestrel said carefully, we may not have that option anymore. Far from the Sara Prime, Admiral Nathan Cole prepared the final phase of the campaign. The human fleet had grown to over 200 warships, each one built in the hidden shipyards of the Veiled Expanse, each one carrying weapons that the Council could not counter. Allied species contributed another 100 vessels, and more were joining every day as the Council's authority crumbled. Intelligence reports that the Council is assembling their entire remaining fleet at the Sara Prime, Maria Santos reported. They're going to make their last stand at the seat of their power. Nathan studied the tactical display, showing the enemy positions. The Council fleet numbered over 600 ships, 3 times the size of his own force. They had fortified the space around the Sara Prime with orbital defense platforms and minefields. They believed their superior numbers would carry the day. They were wrong. Signal all ships, Nathan ordered. We move out at dawn. It's time to finish this. Dr. Samuel Wright joined Nathan on the bridge as the fleet prepared to depart. The scientist had aged dramatically over the years, his hair now completely white, his face lined with the weight of everything he had lost and everything he had helped create. The new weapons are installed on all ships, he reported. They've been tested extensively. The Council's defenses won't hold for more than a few minutes once we engage. Nathan nodded. Good work, Samuel. Your technologies have made all of this possible. Technology didn't make this possible. The people who refused to give up made this possible. Technology just gave them the tools they needed. Catherine Moore arrived on the Vengeance as the fleet assembled. She had spent the last year coordinating with allied species, ensuring that when the Council fell, something better would rise in its place. The new Concordat, as they called it, already had representatives from over 30 species ready to establish a new galactic order. Are you ready for this? Nathan asked her as they watched the stars through the VIEWPORT. Catherine thought of the cell on Sara Prime, where she had spent weeks waiting for execution. She thought of the moment she learned that 3 billion of her people had died. She thought of the years of hiding, planning and hoping for this day. I've been ready for 10 years, she replied. The Battle of the Sara Prime began when the human fleet emerged from subspace in a perfect formation that surrounded the Council defenders. For a moment, both sides simply watched each other, the Council fleet suddenly realizing that they were not facing a desperate rebel force but a disciplined military machine. Then Nathan gave the order to attack. Human weapons tore through Council shields like they were made of paper. Ships that had dominated the galaxy for centuries exploded in brilliant flashes of light. The orbital defense platforms, which had been designed to repel any known threat, lasted less than 5 minutes against weapons they could not understand. Admiral Kestrel commanded the Council defense from his flagship. He was a brilliant tactician, and he tried everything he knew to stop the human advance. He concentrated fire on key targets. He used his numerical advantage to flank enemy positions. He deployed every weapon in his arsenal. Nothing worked. Human ships moved through his formations like ghosts, appearing where he did not expect them, striking where he was weakest. Their shields absorbed everything his weapons could throw at them. Their soldiers boarded his damaged ships with ruthless efficiency, capturing rather than killing whenever possible. After 6 hours of battle, the Council fleet was broken. Over 400 ships had been destroyed or captured. The orbital defenses were gone. The Sara Prime lay exposed to the human force that surrounded it. Kestrel sat on his ruined bridge, surrounded by the bodies of his crew. His ship was dead, drifting powerless in space. He had failed to protect the Council, failed to stop the humans he had been told were defeated. A human boarding team found him there, still sitting in his command chair. Maria Santos led them, her face showing no emotion as she looked at the defeated admiral. "Your High Chancellor should surrender now," she said. "We're not interested in unnecessary death. We've seen enough death to last us forever." Kestrel laughed bitterly. "You think Zorvax will surrender?" "He would rather see the Sara Prime burn than admit defeat to humans." Maria shrugged. "Then the Sara Prime will burn, and Zorvax will watch from whatever cell we put him in. Either way, this is over." The Council's military power had been shattered in a single day. Their fleet was gone, their defenses destroyed, their reputation in ruins. Species that had feared them for millennia now watched their fall with a mixture of shock and satisfaction. Nathan Cole brought the vengeance. Into orbit over the Sara Prime, the planet where humanity had been welcomed and then betrayed now lay at his mercy. He could order its destruction with a single command: burn it as Earth had been burned, make the Valtherans feel what his people had felt. He did not. "All ships hold position," he ordered. "Catherine, prepare the landing force. We're going to do this the right way." Human shuttles descended through the atmosphere of the Sara Prime, carrying soldiers who had trained for this moment their entire lives. They landed at the main spaceport without resistance. The Council guards, seeing the burning wreckage of their fleet in the sky above, threw down their weapons and surrendered. Nathan led the march to the Council chamber personally. He walked through streets that had once celebrated humanity's membership in the Galactic family, past buildings where his people's betrayal had been planned. He felt nothing but cold determination. The doors of the Council chamber opened before him, revealing the great hall where Catherine Moore had once stood with tears of joy in her eyes. Now she stood beside Nathan with tears of a different kind. Tears for everyone who had died to make this moment possible. High Chancellor Zorvax stood alone at his podium. The other Council representatives had fled or surrendered. Only he remained, his pride too great to allow him to run. "So," he said, as Nathan approached, "the primitives have won. What now, human? Will you destroy us as we tried to destroy you?" Nathan stopped a few meters from the being who had orchestrated the murder of billions. He studied Zorvax for a long moment, seeing the fear hidden behind the arrogance, the uncertainty masked by contempt. "No," he said quietly. "We're going to do something much worse. We're going to let you live with what you've done." The reckoning had come at last. The Council chamber fell silent as Catherine Moore stepped forward to address High Chancellor Zorvax. The being who had welcomed humanity to the galactic community and then ordered their destruction stood alone at his podium, his scales pale and his eyes showing the first traces of genuine fear. Around them, human soldiers stood at attention, their weapons lowered but ready. Representatives from the allied species had entered behind the human. A delegation, Kreth warriors with their gray skin and forearms, Selenari telepaths with their silver eyes, Morvax mechanical beings whose lights flickered with satisfaction. The new order had arrived, and the old one was about to end. "High Chancellor Zorvax," Catherine said, her voice echoing through the chamber. "On behalf of humanity and our allies, I am placing you under arrest for crimes against sentient life. You will stand trial before a galactic tribunal. The evidence against you will be presented publicly, and the galaxy will learn the full truth of what you did and why." The Zorvax made a sound that might have been a laugh. "A trial? You think a trial matters? I did what was necessary to protect the Council. Your species was growing too fast, becoming too powerful. We had to act before you became a threat we could not contain. Nathan Cole stepped forward, his face hard as stone. You murdered 3 billion innocent people because you were afraid of what we might become. Children died in their beds. Families were burned alive. Cities that had stood for centuries were reduced to ash in seconds. And you call that necessary? I call it survival, Zorvax replied coldly. The strong do what they must. The weak suffer what they must. That is the way of the galaxy, Catherine said quietly. That was the way of the galaxy. Things are going to be different now. She turned to address the cameras that were broadcasting to every corner of the galaxy. Trillions of beings on thousands of worlds watched as the human diplomat spoke words that would reshape civilization itself. The Galactic Council is hereby dissolved, she announced. Its authority is terminated. Its treaties are void. Its institutions will be dismantled. In its place, we are establishing the new Cordet, a government founded on principles of equality, transparency, and mutual respect. She paused, letting her words sink in. Every species will have an equal voice in the Concordat. No one will be forced into servitude or denied recognition as sentient beings. No one will be betrayed by those they trusted. And no one, no matter how powerful, will be above the law. The broadcast showed reactions from across the galaxy. On Kreth worlds, warriors cheered and raised their fists in celebration. On Selenari colonies, telepaths wept with joy as they felt the emotions of freedom flowing through their networks. On Morvax stations, mechanical beings processed the news and began to understand that they would finally be treated as people rather than property. Even on Valtheran worlds, not everyone mourned. Many ordinary Valtherans had lived in fear of their government for generations. They had not supported the betrayal, had not known the full truth of what their leaders had done. Now they watched in silence as the old order crumbled. Uncertain of what the future would hold, but hoping it might be better than the past, Admiral Nathan Cole walked through the halls of the Council, building as human forces secured the area. He stopped at a window overlooking the capital city of the Sarah Prime. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red that reminded him painfully of the fires he had watched consume Earth 10 years ago. Maria Santos found him there, standing alone with his thoughts. She had been by his side through the darkest years of the war, through battles and losses and moments of despair. She knew him better than anyone alive. We did it, she said softly. We actually did it. Nathan nodded slowly. We won the war. Now we have to win the peace. That's Catherine's job, Maria replied. We're soldiers. We fought so that others could build something better. Nathan thought about his daughters, about the promise he had made to take them to Hawaii, a promise he would never keep. He thought about his wife, about her smile and her laugh and the way she had looked at him with such love. I used to think that revenge would make the pain go away, he said quietly. That when we finally made them pay for what they did, the hole in my chest would start to heal. And did it? Nathan shook his head. No, the hole is still there. It will always be there. But at least now I know it means something. Their deaths weren't pointless. They led to this moment, to a galaxy that might actually be worth living in. Dr. Samuel Wright joined them at the window, looking older than his years but standing taller than he had in a long time. He held a small device in his hands, a holographic projector that showed an image of Earth as it had been before the betrayal. The terraforming project has been approved, he said. We've already begun the preliminary work. In about 200 years, Earth will be habitable again. It won't be the same world we lost, but it will be ours. Humanity will have a home again. Nathan reached out and touched the holographic image, his fingers passing through the blue oceans and green continents. 200 years, he murmured. I won't live to see it. No, Samuel agreed. But our grandchildren will, and their grandchildren will grow up on a world where they can look up at the stars and know that their ancestors faced the worst the galaxy could throw at them and won. Catherine Moore found them as the stars began to emerge over the Sara. Prime, she looked exhausted but at peace, the weight of years of struggle finally lifting from her shoulders. "The new Concordat has ratified the Human Restoration Act," she reported. "Full reparations from the 5 species that participated in the betrayal. Complete territorial sovereignty for all human colonies. A permanent seat on the governing council. And a formal apology that will be broadcast to every world in the galaxy." "And the Valthorans?" Nathan asked. "Their military is being dismantled under Concordat supervision. Their government is being restructured with input from all species. They're going to spend the next century learning the value of the lives they took, not through revenge or cruelty, but through service and restoration. They'll help rebuild what they destroyed." Nathan nodded. It was more than he had expected when this all began. There had been days when he would have been satisfied with nothing, less than the complete destruction of every species that had participated in the betrayal. But Catherine had convinced him that true justice required building something better, not just tearing down what was worse. The 4 of them stood together as night fell over the former seat of galactic power. The Vengeance hung in orbit above them, surrounded by the fleet that had brought humanity from the edge of extinction to the center of a new galactic order. "What do you think they're saying about us now?" Maria asked. "The other species, I mean, the ones who watched us rise from the ashes." Catherine smiled slightly. "I imagine they're saying exactly what they should have said from the beginning. Humans are not a species to be underestimated or betrayed," Nathan added quietly. Samuel looked at the holographic Earth still glowing in his palm, or forgotten. They stood in silence for a long moment, honoring the memory of those who had been lost. 3 billion voices that would never speak again. 3 billion lives that had been cut short by fear and greed and cruelty. They could never be brought back, could never be fully avenged, but they could be remembered. The galaxy that they had died for could be made into something worthy of their sacrifice. In the days that followed, the transition of power proceeded more smoothly than anyone had expected. Most Council species were relieved to see the old order end. They had lived under its shadow for too long, afraid to speak against leaders who held absolute power. Now they had a chance to build something new, something better. The trials began 6 months later. Zorvax and the other architects of the betrayal were brought before a tribunal composed of representatives from every species in the Concordat. The evidence was overwhelming. Recordings, communications, testimonies, and documentation that proved beyond any doubt what they had done and why. Zorvax showed no remorse throughout the proceedings. He maintained until the end that he had done what was necessary, that the strong had a right to eliminate threats before they could grow dangerous. The tribunal found him guilty on all charges and sentenced him to life imprisonment on a remote world, where he would spend his remaining years watching the galaxy he had tried to control flourish without him. Nathan Cole retired from military service after the trials concluded. He settled on a small colony world in the outer reaches of human space, where the stars were bright and the nights were quiet. He spent his days writing the history of the war, ensuring that future generations would know the truth of what had happened and why. Maria Santos became the commander of the Concordat Defense Force, responsible for ensuring that no species would ever again suffer what humanity had suffered. She built an organization dedicated not to conquest or domination, but to protection and justice. Samuel Wright returned to his research, focusing now on technologies that would benefit all species. He became one of the founders of the Concordat Science Academy, an institution dedicated to sharing knowledge and advancing civilization for everyone. Catherine Moore served as humanity's first permanent representative to the Concordat Council. She worked tirelessly to ensure that the promises made in those first days were kept, that the new order remained true to its founding principles of equality and justice. On the anniversary of the betrayal, humans everywhere paused to remember those who had been lost. They lit candles and spoke the names of the dead. They told stories of Earth as it had been, passing the memories down to children who had never seen its blue skies or green forests, and they looked up at the stars with a mixture of grief and pride. Knowing that their species had faced the darkness and emerged stronger, the galaxy would never forget the lesson humanity had taught them. Never again would anyone mistake human mercy for weakness. Never again would anyone assume that a peaceful species was an easy target. Never again would anyone underestimate the species that had risen from the ashes of genocide to reshape the galaxy according to principles of justice and hope. The stars belonged to everyone now. But they would always remember who had paid the price to make it so. Humanity had not merely survived. Humanity had transformed tragedy into triumph, betrayal into justice, destruction into creation. And in doing so, they had shown the galaxy what it truly meant to be human. The vicious revenge that Earth had taken was not measured in blood or fire, but in the building of a civilization that would stand for millennia. That was the astonishment that echoed through the galactic council's halls and into the hearts of every being who heard the story. Humanity had won, not by becoming monsters, but by becoming exactly what they had always been: survivors, dreamers, builders, and believers in a better tomorrow. And tomorrow had finally arrived.